But everybody please get out of the station.
If the car isn't there, then there's not a huge amount that he can do.
And you're right there. It's okay. Don't worry, we're only doing a podcast.
Are you scaring children?
I agree with Ted, it's a huge mistake. I think one that they are going to be absolutely kicking themselves for.
Pigeon. Nice pigeon.
I think we should stop putting so much pressure on those that graduate from F1 Academy.
Hello everybody, welcome to the post-Las Vegas F1 show sponsored by Audi after a frankly unfathomable mistake by McLaren has led to the disqualification of both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and it has once again blown the title race wide open with two races and a sprint to go in the last 2 weekends in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. I am delighted to say I'm joined by Jamie Chadwick and Ted Kravitz, who is on the move. He's on the hoof. He's in Paddington, and you can only see half of his face. But you know, maybe that'll do for us. Guys, welcome. What an amazing end, I suppose, to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We were off air, obviously, when everything was happening. But the FIA's post-race scrutiny showed that the skid blocks on both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri's cars were worn beyond the legal limit. It's a fundamental technical regulation failure. And it meant that the minimum thickness of 9 millimeters was exceeded by Lando Norris by 0.12 millimeters. That was over the wear limit, and Oscar Piastri by 0.26 millimeters over the rearmost skids. Apparently, the top 10 were all measured, but these two failed it in scrutineering. Ted, let's get into you to start with. I mean, in terms of timings, you could not credit this one, could you? I mean, if you're a McLaren engineer now, or you're the ones responsible for the setup, what are you thinking? Because this could be championship defining.
Can you hear me? I'm in Paddington. Sorry about this. I'm actually on my way to Oxford. I'm going for a nice day out with my wife. These back-to-backs don't allow you too much time, do you? Do they? With your family? So now this is the only day I've really got free after arriving back yesterday, and we're off to Qatar tomorrow. So Tuesday is the only day. So the kids are off at school. Kate and I are going to Oxford for a nice day out. She's going to go to Blackwell's bookshop. I'm going to kick around the dreaming spires, and we're going to have a nice day out. So I'm at Paddington, so sorry about that. Can you see Brunel's wonderful beamed roof behind me? The glass could do with a bit of a clean.
Isambard Kingdom, Brunel.
Yes, exactly. The thing about the McLaren thing is what settles on it. I'll get to your point about the FIA and choosing who to investigate and why in a second. But what a waste of time, money, and effort. And when you look at it, I'm not just talking about, it's the same for Ferrari's double disqualification in China. The only conclusion you can have is that when you have that kind of thing, it just boils down to what a waste. Let's say Lando and Oscar traveled to Vegas on a private jet so to make them more comfortable. Let's say that McLaren spent tens of thousands of pounds on a private jet to make them more performant, to make them better rested. What a waste of that money. What a waste of the super glue that was pinning together some of the grommets in the car, because otherwise they might work loose and the car might not finish. What a waste. What a waste of the nutritionists getting in the best food, because that will put Oscar and Lando in the best position to do well in the race. What a waste of that. What a waste of that qualifying session, expending all of that skill and energy and mental energy on keeping their heads in, and Lando's brilliant pole in that terrifying looking qualifying session. What a waste. All for nothing. All for absolutely nothing. No points, no result. And okay, clearly they couldn't have known it when they were spending that energy and that money. But when you make a mistake like this, it just comes down to underlining how many things go into making a successful Grand Prix weekend. And then to answer your second question, I think the FIA didn't need a tip-off from anybody. And yes, there might have been some races in the not too previous past where they thought, okay, well, you're a bit marginal on plank wear. We'll give you we'll let you have this one because you're a 9 millimeters or more, but we're going to investigate. But I think the moment they saw all those sparks, the moment they saw the car dragging itself down the straight, the moment they heard the radio messages, they knew they had to investigate everybody, which they did. They didn't just single out a cars for an 81. They investigated everybody. Everyone else passed. McLaren didn't. And I think it was the honourable thing, the right thing and the honourable thing for Andrea Stella to apologise, because to all their fans, to all the mechanics, to the drivers themselves, to the supporters, to the sponsors, to everybody, it's the honourable thing to do to apologise.
Yeah, I mean, apology will get you so far with the team, but I mean, there are echoes here of 2007, Jamie, in terms of like being fair to both of your drivers, and now you're in a position whereby, I mean, if you just look at the gap, it was 104 points, the gap between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri 6 races ago. They are now level. And the question is now going to be, well, first of all, let's get your take on what happened. But I also want to throw it forward because there are a lot of questions we now need to answer about what might happen in the last 2 races. And have we now reached a point where they might say, whoa, Max is too dangerously close now. We need to change this. We need to review, because they did say they'd do that. That's what Andrea Stella said. But Jamie, yeah, come on, let's get your take on it.
I agree with Ted. It's a huge mistake. I think one that they are going to be absolutely kicking themselves for, because I think it's a mistake or a risk they didn't need to take. I think you look at that weekend as a whole, yes, they didn't have all the data that they needed from free practice to be running exactly maybe at the absolute optimum. But if you've got kind of an area which you're confident and comfortable with, you're leading the World Championship, I think they were better off going in that than taking too much risk, which for me, it was unnecessary risk, because they didn't need to beat Max at the weekend, but they did need to score obviously good points to give them the advantage going into the last few races, which now they're completely wiped out. Although that said, I think part of me sees it as racing. Both drivers could have crashed into each other, taken each other out. That's part of the sport. Part of the sport is trying to get the absolute most out of these race cars. They were trying to do that. They failed, and that's part of it. But at this sort of stage in the season, it's a huge and very costly error. I think in terms of between the two drivers, it's going to be interesting, because actually the driver that got out of it a little bit better, I would say, is Oscar, because the points deficit to Lando is actually less because of the double DSQ than it was when Lando got the second place versus Oscar's finishing position. So that's kind of given Oscar a little bit of comfort in terms of the points difference between him and his teammate. But of course, we've got Max now charging in. And I think we now know that the pressure is going to be on. They had sort of a race win advantage going into the last 2 races, which is what you need and what you want. And now they don't have that. And it's 24 points. It's very close. It's uncomfortable. But I think this is where, the champion's going to come out on top. And that's what, from a sporting point of view, I want to see. Which driver deals with the pressure the best, which team deals with the pressure the best, gets the most out of everything that they've got in these last few races, will win the championship. And I think that's what is the most exciting thing, in my opinion. And if McLaren don't win it, then they've thrown it away. I don't think they need to start or creating team orders. They need to give both drivers the best opportunity in their sort of 2 sides of the garage. And, it's gloves off. It's a fair fight now to the end.
Yeah, the gap was 42 points to Max Verstappen and 30 to Oscar Piastri, which would have meant that Max had to outscore by 17 and Oscar by 5 Lando Norris at the end of the Qatar Grand Prix. That's obviously now completely changed. But for Lando's still in control, no doubt about that. But we are seeing that with Max breathing down the neck. I mean, I wonder if that is the case, Jamie, now, and what you think on this one, Ted, because as I mentioned, those echoes of 2007, if they were to throw the drivers away from here because of this, it would be one of the great collapses in the history of the sport. So do you think that they can mitigate that, or do you think that they're going to still stick with this?
No, I think, listen, Lando will go to Qatar. He'll think, look, I'm the one who's not level with Max on points. I've got this nice advantage. It's still okay. He's in the form of his life. I don't think he will. There's nothing else he can do. He already said in the press release, there's nothing I can do now to change it. I just need to think about free practice 1 in Qatar and then the sprint and then straight into sprint qualifying. The worst thing he could do is start to think, I don't have confidence in what's going on and why did we do that? What a waste. It's up to us to do the hand wringing, isn't it, Simon? It's not up to them. He's already moved on. And you're right there. It's okay. Don't worry. We're only doing a podcast.
If you're scaring children, don't do that.
No. She's just running around. You know how kids like to expend energy before they get on trains. It's always the best thing. You just want to settle them down with some colouring books. Luckily, mine are school age, and they're in school, so I can go off on this little jaunt with my missus. Right. But yeah, he's in the form of his life at the moment, Lando. It's okay. He'll deal with it. Oscar now at a track that maybe arguably he'd think, well, hang on, this was my opportunity. These were the last two tracks where I was going to get back to my pre-Monza form, pre-Baku form. He might think, well, thank you very much. But actually, the disqualification hasn't worked out too badly for him, has it? Because it's just meant that Lando hasn't stretched it away from him, but he does have Max now breathing down his neck. Really interesting dynamic. Great for us. But I think Lando will be okay with it.
Ultimately, it's brilliant. I mean, for the neutral, it's brilliant. Let's face that. But if you go to Qatar and you look the last couple of years, actually, it's been more of a Max and Oscar track than it has Lando. In fact, Oscar's won both of the last two sprints there. Max has won both of the last two races, but both of them have finished ahead of Lando in each and every one. So that playing in the back of his mind, Oscar's looking for something. He's not had a podium since Monza, but he's now going to a track where he must be thinking, you know what? I know my way around this. This has been me over him over the last couple of years, and perhaps he can use that to his advantage, Jamie.
Exactly. I think, did Lando out-qualify him last year? Maybe. But I think in terms of tracks-wise, if you look at Vegas and you look at Qatar, they couldn't be more extreme in terms of just differences in track layout, in terms of temperature, in terms of grip, everything. It's so polar opposite. Tyre degradation, everything. So I think if there's any sort of positive feeling going into this weekend, for sure Oscar should have it. That said, I agree with Ted. I think Lando is in the form of his life in many regards. I think he's under a huge amount of pressure. He's absorbed majority of the pressure already. And I think the confidence he can take from a few decisive and critical moments where he's sort of been able to respond from difficult moments and show that he can deal with that pressure. I think he can carry that into these last two rounds and be confident. The person that hasn't actually been able to do that so well, it seems, is Oscar. So again, he needs a good weekend, or otherwise I think his championship hopes are going to be put to the side. But yeah, Vegas, Austin, Qatar is, get there eventually. Qatar as a track, McLaren, you would expect them to have a good car. That said, Max won there last year and was on pole last year. So it really is up in the air. I think looking at last year's results to this year's results hasn't actually been that obvious in terms of trends. So I think going into this weekend, it could be anyone but McLaren. We would expect to have a stronger package.
Okay, but if you go back to the Chinese Grand Prix where the Ferraris, this happened to the Ferraris. The reason the plank was added in 1994 was it was introduced to stop the cars from bottoming out or running dangerously close to the ground following Senna's death at Imola. When you've got something that is running as like once something like this has happened, Ted, to the McLarens, for example, are they then going to go into Qatar and they're going to think, well, we cannot avoid this. We can't let this happen again. We've got to factor in a little bit more ride height, which will then affect performance, which then can swing it Red Bull's way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for that, you need no more evidence than Austin, do you? Because they did exactly the same thing in Austin. When they both crashed on the in the sprint race, they didn't get the information for how low they could run their car and had to jack it up a bit, and then said that they were 0.2. They left 0.2 of a second per lap in the garage. Do you remember the phrase they said? So yeah, absolutely. Max will be thinking, well, hey, I mean, look, Max was going to probably win. He's got a good chance of winning Qatar and or Abu Dhabi anyway, bearing in mind what we said about the McLarens and and Oscar going well there. But yeah, definitely. They just need to minimize the damage. Max probably will win Qatar and Abu Dhabi. And then 24 points to Lando?
Yeah, but Lando
really dodgy. But I mean, I guess he can afford that if he finishes second. Yeah. But then who knows where Mercedes are going to be with a McLaren that's jacked up to avoid this waste of time, energy, and money again.
So ignore the plankware thing, but getting into the race itself, Jamie, and watching again. If we're just looking for small things, because it is small things now at this business end of the season, if we can call it that. We understand Max did a few more burnouts, prepped his tyres a little bit better than Lando. He'd only done 2 or I think maybe 3 to Max's 5. And then he had a great start and forced Lando into making an aggressive move, which then sent him wide at that first corner. And I just wonder with that, Lando's clearly frustrated afterwards. It was like, and he swore. He swore. I couldn't believe he swore on the world feed. But that's how annoyed he was with everything. And I wonder again, it's just these little things, isn't it? When you come down to it, another little psychological twist in the tail potentially. And Max obviously in fine form as well with a Red Bull that's working so well.
Yes, I think it would have been an expensive weekend for Lando in the end then. But yeah, I think from his perspective, I like the fact he's aggressive. I like the fact he was trying to be aggressive into one, too aggressive, missed his brake zone, went straight on. That turn one is so tricky at Vegas. I think we saw further back kind of the impact of even some of the rookie drivers that maybe haven't had that run into turn one before. That braking zone appears very, very quick, and there's so low grip down there that yeah, it's incredibly tricky. So he made the mistake, lost the position, and that was that. I don't think he'll read too much into that. I think obviously he'll learn from it, take on board what he needs to. But I think, to be honest, the race anyway, with the management that Lando had to do at the end of the race, even with the disqualification, I think Max had very, very strong pace. And yeah, but for me, Qatar's going to be a completely different weekend. I think the bumpiness of the Vegas track and the unknowns from free practice led them into this pathway of kind of a little bit of guesswork, which should never be the case in Formula One. But at Qatar, I'd imagine they'll know exactly what they're working with and the parameters around that. And Lando just needs to focus on himself, do the best job in free practice, best job in the sprint race, best job in qualifying, like we saw from him in Brazil and Mexico. If we see that version of Lando, then he'll have a very strong weekend and there'll be no issues.
Just a quick one on the debrief at McLaren. What do you think? Andrea Stella, as you said, he came out and he's publicly apologised to both of his drivers. But what do you think that the race engineering team and Zach will be saying to their drivers to keep them calm at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, nobody, just don't panic. You can't start going in to a investigation and a blame game. Not that actually McLaren and Andrea Stella and Zach Brown run a blame culture, but you can't do that in the middle of a triple header. That will wait until after Abu Dhabi. Let's just get through this triple header. They've all just got off the 15.5-hour flight from Las Vegas to Doha. They've only just got off it now. They've got to rebuild the cars. Just take it on the chin, jack the car up a millimeter or two, take the hit, try to get out, through. But They can't start with all of that nonsense now.
Level-headed, Jamie. They've got to be level-headed. They have been level-headed throughout the year. They've been very pragmatic and they've stuck to their guns. So I mean, I'm reverse engineering everything I said earlier, but they don't feel to me like a team that even now that the pressure is probably at the highest. Well, it's definitely the highest it's ever been this year. I'm kind of with you two. I just can't see them changing the way that they've gone racing for the sake of it.
No, I also don't think they should. I think they've had the success they've had this year with that approach. Okay, at times it's been a bit frustrating to watch and could have had different outcomes at different points in the season, but they've won the Constructors' World Championship in a dominant fashion. They've got an amazing team morale, it seems, amongst the team members, and so far they've managed to keep the relationship between the two drivers, despite a few little incidences together, fairly positive. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. But it's going to ramp up. The last closing part of the season, particularly if it gets close between Lando and Oscar, is going to properly ramp up. And that sort of pressure cooker is going to cause, friction and tension within the environment. And it's exactly what Ted said. You can't have this blame culture. As soon as you have that, I think suddenly it starts to unravel and it's going to be a problem for everyone all involved. So they need to keep the team atmosphere high. Drivers should never blame teams should never blame drivers. If you start doing that, then, it's probably weighs out 50-50 throughout the season. And I think they just need to keep the atmosphere positive and get the best out of everyone for the rest of the year.
How you doing for time, Ted? I don't want you to miss that. I don't want you to miss your trip to Oxford. We still okay?
Oh yeah, no, we're fine. What should we move on to next, Simon?
Well, what we'll move on to, why don't we take a break? Let's take a break and then we can round up all the other stories because I'm going to keep this tight. I'm running a tight ship today on your behalf. I can't have you miss the Dreaming Spires of Oxford. So yeah, we'll take a short break. On the other side of that, we'll wrap up the rest of the stories. Quick word on our show partner, Audi. The philosophy of Audi Sport isn't just about winning races, it's about pushing boundaries. Everything learnt on the track goes straight into Audi's road cars, making them just as thrilling as they are refined. Take the Audi RS range, serious performance, but with a level of sophistication and refinement that doesn't need to be loud to make a statement. It's that perfect blend of power and precision wrapped in quiet luxury. Whether it's their powerful style or the RS Sport suspension with Quattro all-wheel drive for razor-sharp handling, Audi is constantly redefining the future of performance. Book a test drive today to experience the Audi RS range for yourself. Hello, welcome back to the F1 show, sponsored by Audi. Now, the beneficiaries of that double disqualification for McLaren, very much Mercedes, who have a retrospective podium now for both of their drivers. George Russell elevated to second, Kimi Antonelli elevated to third. Actually, a double change of position for him, wasn't it, actually? Because he finished fourth, then had the penalty, went down to fifth. Now he's finished in third, so he actually finished in three different positions. And maybe we could start, if we could, Jamie, with Kimi Antonelli. He's obviously a victim of the yellows in qualifying, very difficult qualifying session. But then they did something spectacular, did Mercedes. They pulled off a blinder, started on the softs, second lap came in, then did 48 laps on the hard, managed it well all the way to the end. Perhaps they didn't have the level of graining that we were expecting, but showing another string to his bow, Kimi. The fact that he can nurse the tyres late on. We've seen the pace. We're just seeing a guy maturing in front of our eyes, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think his strongest race as well. He did an incredible job. Qualifying a little bit unlucky. I think he made a little mistake locking up in the wet, but those conditions were incredibly tough as they were. And yeah, the race, I think, was super impressive. I think if you take out the 5-second penalty, which was such a small little thing, but obviously he'll learn from that, and it's literally one of those tiny things that is frustrating. But then I think, to be honest, the way Mercedes managed it from there on in, I think using the knowledge also from George, understanding what the tyres were doing, because I think we all expected to see this sort of graining and drop-off effect, and he just kept pushing, and if anything, it cleared it up and made it, he was fine in performance. He had negative degradation as that race went on, something I don't think anyone was expecting. And he raced really, really well. I think, like you say, it's kind of just adding to the strengths we're starting to see from him. We've seen this kind of one-lap pace get stronger throughout the season. We've seen him sort of be more confident under pressure in the sort of Q1, Q2, Q3 phase of qualifying, not making any mistakes, getting through the whole phase of qualifying and sort of putting the laps in as needed. And then now race pace, that's the bit that it seems to take a lot of the drivers the longest to get used to coming into Formula One, particularly someone like Kimi, who hasn't spent loads of time on this sort of Pirelli tyre. He's been fast-tracked through the junior ranks, so he only had the 1 year in F2. So for him to learn all of this takes time, and I think now we're really starting to see him come on strong, and 3 podiums in 3 races effectively. Is that right? 2 podiums in 2 races. I think that confidence is going to be everything for a young driver like Kimi.
And it must, when you think about some of the people at Mercedes who really put their necks on the line, but they said, right, we believe, we back Kimi, and then he had a difficult start to the season. He got the kick up the backside, we understand, around Monza, and ever since then, it has been an amazing turnaround for him. And I think it probably is reaffirming what everybody thought about him, that this kid is a special talent. It just took him a bit of time to bed in, and perhaps the sky's the limit now. And Toto will be thinking, great, okay, look, if we've got a potential championship winning car next year, he's got now a strong team if he can continue at this rate of progression.
Yeah, funnily enough, they've all been proved right, haven't they? So the ones who said that Kimi is a generational talent, we should get him in as soon as possible, they've been proved right eventually, with about 4 or 5 races to go. And the ones like James Allison, who on the record on that WhatsApp film, do you remember, was saying, I think it was called The Seat, was saying, I think it's too early for Kimi this year, and I'd rather see him in another year of Formula 2 or just a reserve driver. James Allison has been proved right, minus 3 or 4 races when he's finally got it in. So James Allison would say, see, I told you it was too soon, but he's come good. And the others would say, see, I told you he was ready. It came good in the end. So yeah, well done to him, and
Yeah.
well done to George Russell. We should underline that as well. I think he wanted the race win in Vegas. He thought it was. I've got the feeling after qualifying he was a little bit disappointed that they weren't able to get on pole or near it in the wet. He really fancied a repeat win of last year. For whatever reason, overtaking was more difficult, and he wasn't going to beat Max today or then, and obviously he got the second after Lando was disqualified. So yeah, very solid return to form for George Russell, and pitting under that early virtual safety car, getting rid of the soft tyre, and then going long, even though with the penalty, as Jamie says, a bit annoying, but good result for Kimi.
He doesn't go missing at all, George Russell, as I was saying, and I've pains to say over the course of the weekend, Jamie, and you know him better than most, that the fact that he's only failed to score points once, only qualified outside the top 6 once. Now it's 9 podiums to his name. It's one of those seasons where we're talking about how there's 150th Grand Prix start for him, same as Lando Norris, but George has clicked into a different level. And I think everyone, even Toto this weekend, admitted he is absolutely ready to win a title if we can give him the car.
100%. I think that's the thing. When you want to look at a driver that can win a world title, you need this sort of consistency. The ability to make your bad days not that bad, never lose too many points on those days, take what's given to you. You're not always overly ambitious and making mistakes as a result of it. And I think that's exactly what we've seen from George this year. And what's exciting to me actually is just that combo, him and Kimi for next year. I think Kimi in his second season, I think he's definitely got an opportunity to really make a mark and step it up. But I think George, for sure, if that car is capable, I think there's definitely an opportunity for a first world championship on that side of the garage.
I mean, in terms of orders of stories here, probably I'll come on to Lewis Hamilton in a moment. But as we're talking about rookies, Isaac Hadjar elevated. Well, no, he finished in 6th. Again, he's inside the top 10. And with the double disqualification, Ollie Behrman inside the top 10. It has been when you look at that tranche, if you like, that group of drivers that came through F2 together. So Alex Albon, George, is that pigeon? Nice pigeon. What's it doing? You feeding it?
Yeah, I mean, they did. Listen, where are they? Toro Rosso, Isaac Hadjar. Yeah, did well.
No. I wanted to hear about the pigeon.
Oh, it did. Well, I have been menaced throughout this podcast by the Paddington Station pigeons. Strangely, not one of them has got a gammy leg, which is unusual for London for London pigeons, actually. But it's only because I've got a cup of tea and not a croissant that they've kept the side. I did toy with the idea, Simon, for comic effect, of had I bought a croissant here at Paddington Station, of putting some of the crumbs on my shoulder, and then the pigeon could have joined in with the podcast as well.
Just a quick one on pigeons. Yeah. I once lived the top floor flat in near Hammersmith Bridge, and it was a very hot summer, and I kept my windows open in my office. A pigeon got in, and that was pretty much the end of all my furniture. If you get a pigeon in the house, getting it out, I had a 7
merry hell. Yeah,
get out! It caused merry hell, but so at least it's only crawling around your feet. But yeah,
no, that's all right. That's fine. But you said about the Racing Bulls and Hadjar, and that was good. And it was a good day potentially with the McLaren's going out. A good day for other people to make big progression, big points gains in the constructors. Actually, I thought the most significant thing that happened was that Aston Martin were overtaken in the constructors championship. Something I didn't think they expected. Well, maybe they did expect, but they were pretty annoyed that they couldn't take advantage. Obviously, not Lance Stroll's fault. He wasn't able to make any progress after he was clattered into by Gabriel Bortoleto. Maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. And Fernando Alonso having successfully done the undercut on the Racing Bulls, then managed to get past again. So really difficult times for Aston Martin.
Yeah, really difficult times, and we're going to come on to Andy Cowell in a couple of moments. But whilst we're talking about the top 10, obviously Carlos Sainz, you're part of the Williams family, Jamie, elevated to 5th. I think the stats, he had 16 points in his first 17 races, and then 32 in the last 5. Welcome back, smooth operator. But he's now, as much as Lewis is struggling in that Ferrari, it looks like Carlos coming the other way in terms of engine manufacturers, has really got to grips with it, and he's now on form. His teammate Alex Albon with another DNF. It is certainly he of the pair that is finishing the stronger.
Yeah, it's a season of two halves for both Williams drivers. Alex, super strong at the beginning of the year. Carlos now super strong in the second half. Ideally, if they could both marry up their form, then Williams would be in a really strong place. But I think, showcasing, obviously, his experience, his ability, what he can do now. He's comfortable in that car. It does take time. He's been in a few different environments of Formula One cars, but naturally it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, which we saw at the beginning of the year. And now he really has come a form. And I think it's when conditions are tricky, when there are tricky scenarios, that he seems to get the most out of it, like in qualifying in the wet, like at Baku as well. And then he knows who his fights are with. I think in the races, he doesn't overdo it. He knows where he's going to get points. He's not trying to go for podiums or wins when they're not there. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, and a lot that the team, I think, are very grateful for, that they've got that experience in Carlos now, and really solidifying that position in the championship with the constructors, which is huge for that team.
It's huge, and there's 4 teams that have got Mercedes engines next year. Now, it's going to be a lot down to the chassis, I would have thought as well. But what do we think about Williams' chances next year of really making inroads and potentially, getting into that top 4, getting amongst the big teams? It feels like the trajectory is like that. It's kind of an exponential curve when you look at where they've been in recent seasons. I think since 2017, this is obviously their most successful year. I just kind of like what I see at Grove. I think we all do, don't we, Ted?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, sorry about the noise. They did. Sorry. I think they're having a trial. I think they're testing the evacuation. Did they know that we were doing a podcast? They did. So when they do the trial suspect package announcement about Inspector Sams, if anyone doesn't travel on National Rail very often, when you hear them saying, "Will Inspector Sams report to the duty manager?" that means there's a suspect package. And now they've gone one further than that and said, "Will everybody please get out of the station?" But I think it's just a test. But sorry, Simon. In the middle of that, what was it specifically you were talking about?
No, just saying about,
couldn't hear a word.
About Williams.
Williams. Yeah. No, it's great, isn't it? I mean, I think Alex Albon is a bit of a difficult one for me. With them not seeing that the front wing needed changing. There is still, it's weird with Williams. I was reflecting on this, having a sort of think about this. They went from a deeply mature and comfortable in their ways race team, and in the process of being remade in the Vowles image, I feel that they've become this sort of young race team that, in a sense, doesn't have the operational maturity as they go through some changes, as Williams Grand Prix engineering had in the past, in the Mansell, Prost, Senna, Hill, Villeneuve, Ralf Schumacher, Montoya days. It's a weird one, isn't it, Simon? Do you detect that in changing from the old Williams to the new Williams? They seem to be missing some of the basic stuff, but no, they're getting there, and science is finding his way. Albon needs to get out of his little rut that he's in, and then I'm going to think they'll be okay for next year. What do you think about
growing pains? I mean, isn't it? I mean, that's probably the case, and maybe we're being too harsh on them. It's just one of those things, wasn't it, with regards to losing communications with Alex, and it having to use the pit boards to communicate with him. But I mean, where do you stand on what Ted was saying there, Jamie? Do you kind of agree? I saw you nodding along.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is growing pains, but it's interesting because it's almost as if they didn't expect to be fighting as high up as they have been this year. And so they kind of are expecting these issues. I don't know if that's kind of what they're saying, or the reality of they expect to find teething issues at this phase because, well, for one, they've had quite a big restructure, a lot of new people, a lot of change within that team. But what's exciting for me with Williams is James especially constantly spoke about how he doesn't care about this year, he didn't care about last year, he cares about next year. And I think that's where, given the form that they've had this year, I think they should be quite excited, because if they have put so much of their energy and expertise and everything into next year, then it would be interesting to see where they actually come out, especially with that Mercedes engine.
Yeah, I spoke to him about 18 months ago, and he actually earmarked 2027 for victories, but perhaps 2026 would be too early. But let's wait and see, because they've been impressive this year, and it looks very likely that they're going to finish in fifth. They're 121, so they're 31 ahead of the RBs, the Racing Bulls. But the Racing Bulls, as we've just discussed, have been good, have been really impressive this year. So Ferrari, so Lewis Hamilton, I feel terrible. It's been the worst season ever. No matter how hard I try, it just keeps getting worse. Well, I mean, look, it looks like he's going to have his first podiumless season in the history of the time that he's been in the sport. And he's so deflated at the end of every week now. And as we're saying, John Elkann, with those critical comments post-Brazil and the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, Ted, I don't know, where he's at with his head at the moment. It struck me, as he said, he wasn't even looking forward to next season, which I thought he'd at least be, positive about his chances in 2026, because if they don't get off to a flyer, then there'll be some real question marks about a lot of people at that outfit.
Yeah, well, I think that needs investigating, actually. I mean, this season, as he says, it's been a nightmare. Not his fault, the car being the way it is. And yes, he still can cling to the sprint win in China, but I think he's seen what the rest of the drivers have seen in terms of what 2026 is going to demand from the Grand Prix drivers in terms of energy management. And I'm not sure he likes it. I think if he had tried the simulator and thought, oh, I like this, I kind of like playing around with the battery and this monster acceleration, and then charging up the battery in weird places, and my front wings going down and my rear wings going down, and DRS all over the place for everybody all the time. I quite like this. Then he would have said that. He would have said, oh, but I think we're looking forward to 2026. I think we're going to have a good package. Everybody at the power unit side of Scuderia Ferrari think we're on target. It's all looking good. I think what he's telling us is that he's not sure about the driving, and he's not sure about how the car and the engine are going to go. And I think that's the concerning thing. The only thing I think Hamilton fans can cling to is when Lewis said a few years ago now, it's my masterpiece and I'll decide when it's finished, i.e. I won't be forced out, I will decide when it goes. And when he also said that he didn't want to end his career on a note of disappointment or failure. Well, of course, but hasn't history shown us, Simon, that nobody really ends their Formula One career on a blazing glory, with the possible exception of Nico Rosberg. Nobody ends their Formula One career in a blaze of glory with a championship win and loads of wins. It just doesn't happen like that. And most of the time, Sebastian Vettel, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, even some champions that we work with, their careers have ended with a bit of a just fading out rather than with a big explosion.
Yeah. Well, we know about Nico. He knows about explosions. It was an explosive end, wasn't it, for Nico? But he's that kind of guy, isn't he? You just think, I might get another one, but I might get beaten again, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. Is he? Do you think is it self-induced pressure? Do you think, Jamie, that more pressure than he's ever been under, and more question marks being raised about, whether he's perhaps, look at what Charles done this year, and he's the one that's picked up 7 podiums. His teammate hasn't. He's heavily outscored him. Those kind of question marks are getting stronger and stronger now, and more people are coming out and saying, look, is he past it? Inevitably, you're going to get that when you're, the other side of 40. But I can't believe that Lewis believes that. And, most of his fan base would also say that if he can get the car again, he'll be able to challenge. And I probably don't disagree with him.
Yeah, I think, whilst Charles has outscored him, it's still not been all roses on that side of the garage. There's still a lot of issues and a lot of difficulties that, they face at Ferrari. And I think naturally, in my opinion, it's often, it's not easier, but it's definitely, an environment that's much easier to perform in when you are having success. The whole team around you, the morale is high, you're confident, you're able to kind of have this energy, that you come into each weekend with, and suddenly you have a year like this and it's very, very challenging. I don't think Lewis has forgotten how to drive by any means, but putting together every race weekend like he was doing when he was a dominant force at Mercedes, we seem to have lost that from Lewis. And I think there is a lot, in the car for that reason, that there's a lot in the culture and procedure and everything that we're seeing at Ferrari this year. So if I were him going into next year, I think completely agree with what Ted is saying, that there is going to be a huge change from what's demanded of the drivers and what's required from them inside the cockpit. But equally, try and make that environment an environment that he can get the absolute best out of everyone possible. And when he's performing well, he still is one of the best drivers out there. But it relies on quite a lot of factors now in this sport to get the results. And I think if he can cling on to Ferrari having a decent car for next year, then I absolutely think he should keep going at it, because I don't think he's lost the ability to perform at the highest level. But if the car isn't there, then there's not a huge amount that he can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just the car is the main culprit at the moment. Let's judge him on the start of 2026. A couple of stories just to finish with, Ted, so that you can nip off and get through the gate. Sauber, Gabby Bortoletto, 5-place grid penalty for taking Stroll out and spinning Gasly. Because he retired, he obviously wasn't able to take it in race. Actually, I'm gonna aim that one at you, Jamie, from a driving perspective. When I looked at that move, I was like, what's he doing? I mean, talk about chucking up the inside. That was a proper dive bomb.
I actually initially was like, why does everyone brake so early? And then he braked. It was past the corner. And yeah, proper dive bomb. I think he'll 100% hold his hands up to that one. I think he's a bit lucky with a 5-place grid penalty, to be honest. I think it's probably worth it more. I felt very bad for Lance Stroll, who actually on Lance, I think in the wet, I know we've seen him in the wet perform at a high level, but he was flying. So I think a race that he would have liked to have got some good points at was denied. So yeah, kind of clean cut there. And I think that just shows how tricky, the Vegas track is, that turn one, low grip, everything. But for the rookies especially, it's still, inevitable that we're going to see these rookie errors sneak in every now and then.
I think Lance Stroll, understandably, was livid after being put out on those inters, and he probably could have got through to Q3 and would have done. But they didn't need to risk him, did they? They'd showed amazing pace in qualifying and looking really good, and then he goes out in the inters and misses out, leaves the track very early, and then gets taken out. Lance can probably go home pretty annoyed, I would have thought, Ted, with that one.
Yes, although, Brad Pitt style in F1 the movie, he would have had to be consulted with the tyres, I would have thought, that were going to go on his car. And so he must have had some sort of buy-in to that. And had he seen the inters go on and thought, well, I really don't want to be, had he been livid about it going out, then he would have just said, well, I'm not going out. You better find some full wets, put the full wets back on. So there must have been some kind of buy-in. But I do feel sorry. On Bortoletto, he did say at the beginning of the weekend, explaining his dive bomb into the first corner in Brazil, that he knew what he needed to do now to make the dive bombs, his words, not mine, to make those dive bombs into turn one. You got to make sure that the DRS is fully closed, which it wasn't in Brazil. So I just wonder whether he thought, oh, here we go, turn one, dive bomb, I'll try that again. But poor Gabby Bortoletto, it wasn't great. He'll need a couple of good races in Qatar and Abu Dhabi to regain that kind of one of the rookies of the year alongside Hadjar and Antonelli, because at the moment he's kind of third place behind those two, I would say, in terms of rookie of the year.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, with regards to Aston Martin, now at the time of recording, we just got reports. There's a few reports going around within the motorsport press that Andy Cowell, the CEO of Aston Martin, might be moved across to the powertrain side, away from his position of CEO. And obviously there's speculation about that. We've had Otmar Safnar, Mike Crack, Martin Whitmarsh and Andy Cowell in senior positions. If Cowell gets moved across, then it'll be the latest, I suppose, in the merry-go-round of what's going on at Aston Martin. I have asked Aston Martin for a response to these reports, and they've got nothing more to say. Team is not commenting on speculation and rumour at this stage. But if it was going to happen, you don't know what's going on in the midst of this. But we have said about quite a lot of chefs in high positions at Aston Martin. One of the risks is that if they become at loggerheads, and I'm not saying that's the case, but you've got Adrian Newey there with 12 constructors, 13 drivers' titles to his name. Could you see? I mean, they're kind of moving the chess pieces. Maybe Lawrence Stroll wants to have all of these top men, but if you've got them, not quite interacting correctly. Maybe you have to make a few movements internally. And therefore, the speculation is potentially we get Seidel, Binotto, Christian Horner stepping into that role. Too early to say at the moment. And again, it's speculation. But Ted, again, we go back to growing pains here. Aston Martin are growing rapidly. And is this just one of the things they're going to have to figure out internally?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things on this. So firstly, if Cal has kind of laid a bit of the groundwork for sort of focusing on the new developments in terms of their gearbox and their relationship with Honda. He's the one who's been going out to Honda in Japan to build the relationships with the Japanese engineers in Sakura. So it might not be publicly too difficult for them to say, okay, Andy is going to focus on what he knows in terms of being a power unit man, and he's going to leave the position as CEO of the racing team. Now, that has second thing, if they do that, then okay, then Adrian Newey and Lawrence Stroll, and between them, Mike Crack heading up the engineering side, might be better served not to replace him, given that it's a position that seemingly, that nobody can retain. And if Adrian Newey wants complete say over the racing team and the chassis, then he'll have that, and then maybe they don't need a team principal or a CEO in name. And thirdly, then you get onto Christian Horner. Will he want to come reporting to Adrian Newey? Will that happen? Because as a co-owner, or would Horner be a co-owner as well? In which case, might they go head to head? That might not happen. And then if the final thing on Horner coming in is if Aston Martin are true to their word and that they want Max Verstappen to replace Fernando Alonso when Alonso's contract expires at the end of next year, then is that compatible with Christian Horner being at Aston Martin for reasons that our listeners will know very well? So that's the last thing. That's those things have to be overcome for me.
Perhaps we can liken Adrian Newey and Christian Horner to the Gallagher brothers and Oasis. They went to an Oasis concert together in the summer, having Adrian leaving Red Bull a little bit earlier on. Maybe they're thinking about getting the band back together. I wonder, he wants skin in the game. We know that. That's what Christian Horner wants. Will it be enough skin in the game, and will he have enough control or power if he was to move to Aston Martin? Again, this is speculation. Nobody knows at this stage, but obviously there's options. He's been linked with absolutely everybody, but Aston Martin is a team we understand on the move, and perhaps he'd want in on that, at least at the same parity as Adrian Newey, which is big bucks, Jamie. And equity, huge equity.
And that's the bits that's missing for Christian, isn't it? Is that kind of team owner element that I think he wants to, or if he comes back into the sport, that's the bit that he wants. But do you go for what we've known, a known quantity in Christian and Adrian? I think, there's definitely a lot of positives to take from that. They've had a lot of success together, but I agree with Ted. I think for me, the driver makes a huge difference to the environment. And I think Fernando, if he can step up to that role and really lead the team to win a world championship next year, then great. But if not, Max is going to be the person that they want. Max or George, for me, are the two standouts. And I think picking all the right people and, like you say, moving the chessboard around all happens now. So they need to think not just what they want for next race or the start of next year. They need to think well in advance as to what they want in the future before making these decisions, because the last thing they also want to do is get partway through next year and then continue this sort of merry-go-round of moving senior people around, because that disruption isn't good in any race team. I can't think of a race team that has had so many different people moving around and has been able to continue having success. The best teams are always the ones with continuity, the same people, the same kind of hierarchy, and that allows for the most success in my opinion.
Okay, last one. F1 Academy, Dorian Pain, congratulations to the 21-year-old Frenchwoman, Maya Verd, crashing out in the formation lap, the first race. In the end, it was 15 points between them. She was the runner-up to Abby Pulling last year, but the third winner of F1 Academy after Marta Garcia and Abby Pulling. But well done to her, Mercedes young driver. She's got a bright future. Jamie, come to you on this one first. As I was saying, let's just hope that they can get a little bit further into the motorsport pyramid so that they can see the path through to F1 now, and understand that they're working on that, the F1 Academy, to show that these girls can get to the top, because we want to see someone, a female in Formula One, sooner rather than later, and she's a real talent, this one.
He absolutely is. I was super happy for Dorian. Equally disappointed for Maya. I think both of them all year have been super competitive. But all three of them, have had incredible opportunities as a result of F1 Academy. For me, I think, of course, there's this natural pressure to get a woman to Formula One, but equally, I think we should stop putting so much pressure on those that graduate from F1 Academy. I think what I would love to see is Dorian have a professional career in the sport. I think she's absolutely capable of reaching the highest level in our sport, but equally, I would love to see her as a professional racing driver wherever, her career takes her. And ultimately, what we want to see is from F1 Academy, the impact is this next generation and the younger drivers coming through can kind of follow the same trajectory as a lot of the other drivers on the way to Formula One and ultimately get there. So it's having a positive impact. I'm super happy for Dorian. I'm excited for the future for her, but equally, I just want to see them as professional racing drivers across the board.
Great. Ted?
Yeah, let's get Dorian. Come on, Mercedes. Let's get Dorian Parr in a 2-year-old Mercedes. Come on, Williams. Let's get Jamie Chadwick in a 2-year-old Williams. Come on. Let's F1 teams. Let's put your money where your mouth is. Put your cars where your mouth is. I want to see what Dorian Parr can do. Just give her the seat time in an old Mercedes. Same for Ferrari with Maya Verg. And while you're at it, get Jamie. Come on, Williams. Pull your finger out. Get Jamie in a 2-year-old Williams. Get a nice feature for us. Give us some seat time at the same time. And let's start kicking on because it was great. The F1 Academy in Vegas, I thought was fantastic. The paddock was right next to the F1 paddock. Everybody knew about it. Everyone knew about the season finale. The money is coming in now, which is what did for W Series in the end. 2 big new sponsors, whatever the company is behind Hello Kitty. I don't know what it is, but it's obviously got some money. And Lego, which has also got some money. Yeah. 2 massive new sponsors for F1 Academy. So let's kick on from here.
And watch this space. As far as I understand it, there might be a couple more too. And what you're discussing there about the TPC program, I understand that there might be some movement towards that too. Jamie, Ted, go and get your tray. I'm worried for you.
Thank you very much. From me and the pigeons, I'd like to say thank you very much to Network Rail for their bulletproof and very good Wi-Fi. But maybe they might want to employ Lazenby and Sons window cleaners at Paddington Station because I think these windows do need a little bit of attention.
There is a flooring company, a Lazenby flooring company, in case anyone wants flooring.
But these windows need a bit of attention.
Good.
Thank you.
Jamie, thanks. We're seeing you, Ted. Obviously, I'll see you on the flight tomorrow or when we land. Jamie, are you...
I'll see you on Friday morning or Thursday night.
Great. I shall look forward to that. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to your company. It's all set up now. God, I can't wait for the last 2. We'll see you in Qatar. Ta-ta.